Well, good afternoon, everybody. Once more, welcome to this community update on the status of arrivals. Today, we're going to have a change in the schedule. I know the last two or the last three we broke up into these working groups, but today we really want to just focus on sharing information in this larger group and try to take as many questions as possible, because we think we're in a place where we need to build a lot more the community mobilization, and we thought that just discussing it in the larger group would probably work better in the circumstance. Like every other week, I want to start by thanking you all for the support that we have received from your various organizations and the community at large. We continue to see such support. We have seen several organizations come out to help us with sorting out the donations. We've gone from this chaotic mountain to actually where we are seeing really donations organized in such a way that they would provide a dignified experience for those who will be employing those donations. So really want to thank all organizations that have organized groups to come through. This is something that we're going to have to continue doing till probably till the end of the year, as we're going to be seeing this high volume of arrivals. And then secondly, today we're really going to be focusing on yes, once we have these arrivals, what next? How can the community stay involved in supporting them? Like I always say that our job is not just to welcome people to the community, but we also want to make sure that the people that we welcome here become successful, are able to get on their feet and be able to do things for themselves, obviously with the support of the community. And that's really what we want to focus on. I also want to just to let you all know that we're seeing significant activity in terms of arrivals. And whilst we I don't know, we had an image of what these arrivals would be. We thought it would just be waves and waves of people, but we're seeing these arrivals, and we will share some practical details on what, who is coming, where they're coming from, what kind of groups are we seeing, and all of that, because that would give you an appreciation of what we need to do to be able to accommodate them. With that, so our agenda is essentially going to be, I'm going to turn this over to Blake, who is going to do a weekly update. After he does that, we're going to then talk about community involvement and what that community involvement looks like. And we'll be introducing to you what we're calling the community support program. And that would help you be able to determine how your organization, your network, can be involved in supporting these families who are arriving here. Let me turn it to our Senior Vice President here, Blake Hamilton.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you for spending your Wednesday afternoons with us. We've had a lot of great conversation emerging through our breakout groups, and I want to really shout out the staff members and those who participated within those groups, and thank you all for your commitment throughout these. I do want to make sure that we're spending ample time here talking about where the rubber meets the road, how we partner with organizations to get this work done. So I'll go ahead and step into the update for this week. And today's agenda includes our weekly update, and as Arisa will talk more about community involvement before having a more extensive Q&A session available at the end here. So I'll go forward, jump right into the update. For arrivals, we have gotten some more information from our federal partners around the plan for arrivals coming into the community. As Ray said, we've continued to see the pace increase on our arrivals, but we have been notified that the federal resettlement year is now going to be in a fifth quarter, meaning that we are seeing another 3 month extension of the previous year when it comes to resettlement. So our new fiscal year for resettlement will not begin now until January. What that means is the 1,000 refugees and 50 special immigrant visa holders that we had mentioned will now be arriving on a shorter time frame. So we will see those arrivals coming between the first of the year and the end of September. So we essentially lose 3 months for resettlement, and we'll be resettling that same number just over a shorter period of time, which really means that there's going to be a little bit of a longer tail on this than we initially anticipated in terms of a longer period of very active resettlement. And so while we won't be seeing as many refugees arriving in the next 3 months, part of the reason why this is occurring is that it gives agencies like ours the opportunity to focus on Afghan parolee arrivals who are expected to arrive in higher volume over that first 3 month period. And so we do know that we're starting to see more folks come, and we still have a backlog of walk-ins that have arrived, and we're seeing a sort of limited scheduling of direct flights from the bases at this point, though we know that that could change at the drop of a hat. But a little more diving a little bit deeper into the numbers, we're also have more perspective on the number of parolees who are going to be welcomed to Missouri writ large. So we do know that across the state, agencies in Springfield, Columbia, and Kansas City, in addition to St. Louis, that total number for Afghan parolees is 1,525. And as you all know, around this table, that's 500 coming here to St. Louis, with the rest settling elsewhere in the state. Locally in St. Louis, what we have seen, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the numbers that we've discussed previously, but since September 1st, we have had 67 arrivals, predominantly refugees and special immigrant visa holders. And there are 18 APA, Afghan placement clients who are pending approval. So those are folks who presented, who walked into our offices and said that they are Afghan parolees seeking service. They have that documentation, which we then refer to our national partner, USCRI, to affirm our ability to serve them as a case under the APA program. We are seeing delays, though, in the approval of those cases for service that is nearing now 2 months. So while we have 67 arrivals, we have another 18 individuals who are still waiting for approval before they can be enrolled into our programs. They are being referred for services elsewhere and being provided supports in other ways through other programming that we do have available. However, the bulk of the resettlement dollars available to these folks is not available to them until they are actually able to enroll. So these are folks who've walked off of military bases predominantly and have not necessarily waited for travel arrangements. And as we've discussed in this meeting every week, the conditions in bases are very challenging. And so it's no surprise that some people elect to walk off. But however, that does mean this sort of delay in processing and getting connected to agencies like ours for service. So while we have 67 arrivals, there's functionally 18 others who have been receiving service in limited capacity from us. Of that number, of that 67 number, 39 of those folks are children. That's 61%. Now that's trending a little bit higher than what we assume the average might be, a little bit closer to 50. So that is trending a little bit higher, but it's not necessarily a full-on shock to us. We know that we've seen a lot of large cases. We've seen 2 cases of 8 and a case of 10 have arrived over this period, which is a lot of children, and obviously in those cases. The average case size, though, that we have seen since September 1st is about 4.5. in this place, this is a little actually below the average. So what we can say is that while we do see a large number of children, the case sizes is actually trending a little bit lower. When the case sizes are higher, we know there's actually more children that are being connected for service. So, and I do want to take a pause in a moment, and I have gotten a question since the last time. People say, oh, we really love the pictures that have been included in the slides. And I just want to reference that these are actually pictures that we've taken. These are clients of the agency that have authorized us to use their photos in these ways. So everybody you see here is a past client of the agency. And the family that you see here is meant to show what the composition of a lot of our cases looks like. Two parents with many school-age children and some not even yet eligible for school who are arriving. And the composition of the cases that we're seeing is kind of following along the same lines that we've described before. But there are now newly available supports that I did want to mention here in the next bullet point. And that is Afghan placement assistance is now going to be, those folks who are in that program are going to have access to refugee support services specifically for their cases. Now, what this allows us to do is provide ongoing support beyond the resettlement period for a period of years after arrival, should, of course, the parolees transition to another status that will allow them to stay in the country. These are funds that would allow us to be able to serve folks for multiple years after arrival. And so we're very encouraged and very excited to hear about these funds, which will be entering our state to support these Afghan parolees beyond just that initial resettlement period. The funds that are going to be available fall into essentially three buckets. The first is refugee support services themselves. These are services that our case managers provide, which have a focus on gaining employment and meeting needs of the entire family in order to accommodate employment. So that would be childcare, access to health, et cetera. Intensive case management as needed to help address some of the challenges that are creating barriers to access to employment. Those are very high touch services that we're providing within the RSS program. But within RSS, there's actually separate other buckets, or along the lines of RSS, there's two other buckets that I wanted to make mention of. But under this RSS number, there'll be $3.825 million coming into the state of Missouri, again, to be utilized by these organizations that are serving APA clients in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, and Springfield. And so that money will be divided up to these organizations by essentially in a formulation that involves the number of clients that they will be expecting to serve, given the resettlement numbers, that 1,500 number for Afghan parolees is divided up amongst those agencies. And so the funds likewise are divided up by those agencies based on the numbers that they'll be serving. And that again is Q1. Those are Q1 dollars, and we have no reason to believe that number is going to stay the same throughout the 4 quarters of the year. But we do know that allotment will be coming into the state for these agencies that are serving Afghan parolees. In addition to those RSS funds, there are funds available for refugee school impact. And at this point, we have I believe we have, and our partners here at MOER can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have 3 districts at this point statewide that are accessing refugee school impact dollars. And these are dollars that are dispersed through DESI. These are funds that go to DESI for dispersal to districts that are disproportionately impacted by the arriving refugees and parolees. So in our region, that is SLPS, does receive the funds that come to St. Louis to assist the arrivals that are entering the district. But those numbers and the types of services that might be available to clients through these funds could change. Right now, we don't have any parameters based on for the expenditure of these funds. as I described the services to you, these are really historic, the ways that these funds have historically been used. But given how everything is seemingly up for change at any time, I can only assume that as we get more information about this, we might learn more details that maybe provide a wider latitude for the expenditure of these funds. But we'll certainly know more about any restrictions on these funds and how they are used down the line. This is an announcement that functionally happened yesterday, so this is very late breaking news. The other bucket here is for health promotion. And this is a fund likewise available to the various refugee resettlement agencies that are working with Afghan parolee clients. And coming into the state will be $557,000 in health promotion funds. And again, these two numbers, both for refugee school impact and health promotion, are Q1 numbers. And I want to reiterate that point that we cannot just multiply these numbers by 4 and assume that those are the funds that'll be coming into the state on a regular basis. In fact, I think we can reasonably assume that these numbers are front loaded. As these will be serving people who are newly arrived, and the bulk of new arrivals will be coming in this first quarter of this fiscal year between now and the end of December. The health promotion services or health promotion funds are really designed to help healthcare providers in the region make sure that their services are readily available and accessible to folks who are incoming. So ensuring that the proper language resources are in place, that outreach and promotional materials are available in languages targeting these groups, that we are developing relationships as an organization serving these folks with healthcare providers to ensure the smoothest possible transition and access to both health and mental health services. And we've talked several times before in our health and mental health breakout rooms around the various needs and the pronounced need amongst the group that we're serving. And these funds are meant to, again, sort of grease the wheels and increase the pathways for people accessing these services. They are not materially enough to have a rapid expansion in service in any of these areas, but are really functionally to be used, at least historically, in promoting access. And again, likewise, we will get more details about how these funds can explicitly and specifically be used as we kind of progress forward. And functionally, what the RSS services, it really allows us to extend some of these high-touch services beyond that 90-day period within RSS. Refugee school impact dollars, again, go to districts for use in hiring staff and expanding capacity and serving students with limited English proficiency and their families. And health promotion is really functionally about connecting folks with healthcare providers and ensuring healthcare providers have the resources they need to provide the highest standard of care for these incoming arrivals.
Like, I would say you pause there before we go on to the next item on the agenda. If you would, would stay on the screen and open up for any questions at this point. Then we'll go on to talk about that next step on community involvement. Any questions from anybody?
I did get a point of clarification from Anita. Yes, when we talk about Q1, we're talking about the federal fiscal year. Q1, so that's here in October through December. So these aren't funds that are going to be delayed till January, but things that will be made available to us within this quarter.
And just to reiterate, like it said earlier, it's not really this won't be something we'll get every quarter in this amount. This is front loaded. Again, they're going to reevaluate what the needs are and what the distribution of Afghan humanitarian parolees is throughout the states, and then we may get additional funding at a later time during the year.
I would also just, in terms of further updating based off of last week's information, we are still understanding that there is going to be opportunities for us to continue through USCRI to offer more slots for Afghan parolees coming to St. Louis. Right now, we are sitting at that 500 number, as that's really the capacity that we have at present. And we'll talk a little bit later about what are the the factors that we're considering as we kind of look at whether or not we'll be able to put up a higher number, offer up 600, 700 or more slots through the year. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the factors that go into that a little bit later today.
Thank you, Blake. And Linda, any other questions without which?
Mark asked in the chat, how long beyond 90 days do we anticipate being able to serve? Well, these funds have an obligation date, I believe, of 2023. However, this is really about the eligibility of the folks who these funds are specifically designed for. So as we've talked about before, Afghan parolees arriving, parolee status is only available to anybody arriving as APA for 2 years. And after 2 years, they will need to either be on another status or face the possibility of deportation. And so if folks are able to transition to another status, there are other programs. There's mainstream RSS services that we do provide at the Institute for all refugees beyond 90 days. It allows us to serve and provide the same services for up to 5 years after arrival. But specifically, these APA RSS services, I think, are likely to be available to folks up until that final obligation date in 2023, or possibly final expenditure date. I believe that'd be 2024, but Linda, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, we MORA, which is the part, the section of the institute that I am with, we have to obligate the monies by September 30th of 2023, but they don't have to be fully expenditured or liquidated until September 30th of 2024. So we have a 2-year time period essentially to spend those funds.
And so that would mean that those services would be available, yeah, through that period. But the likelihood is that folks who are accessing these services will be transitioning to other statuses that allow them to access other similar pots that will allow for the same services to be provided for an even longer period of time, again, up to 5 years.
Yes.
Great. I think this is I hope that this provides clarity for Mark's question. We're going to go on to the second item, the next item on our agenda, which is going to be community involvement. And we have been working to develop this community support program that we're going to be introducing here today. And I would have Ariel and Wafa. Wafa is our lead on this community support program, and Ariel is vice president who works with Resettlement. So I don't see Ariel.
Here.
Ariel?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. And I put my videos on.
I can see you now.
Okay, great. Hello, everybody. It's great to all get together and try to come up with ways that we could serve all of these newly arriving refugees. So I really look forward to this. I'm going to start by talking about our community support program, and then I'm going to turn it over to Wafa, who is going to give you more, a little more specific information. Keep in mind that our support program was initially developed to support newly arrived refugees with community integration. Community support, or CS. I'm going to frequently just say CS instead of the full community support. CS volunteers hopefully will be able to build relationships with refugees that create bridges for community integration, ultimately enhancing their resettlement to St. Louis. Now, as Ari said, Wafa is the CS coordinator and the point of contact for volunteers and groups in this program. In about 2015, 2016, the Institute did a similar program, not exactly the same thing, but a similar program. So we know that situations are going to occur that will need to be discussed. Wafa should always be the contact for this program, and if any situations arise when working with a refugee family. Now, it's important to know that our national agency, USCRI, United States Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, does not allow anyone other than resettlement staff to provide resettlement-specific services. As a USCRI or USCRI resettlement agency, the Institute must provide and document a list of initial resettlement services, such as airport meets, ESL registration, health screening, benefits, and a few others. So USCRI will not allow us to have volunteers go and provide some of these services. We have to initially provide the services, and then yes, we can hand it off to the family and volunteers to continue to follow up with it, but we have to provide the initial service and document it. WAPA is going to discuss a little bit later on some of the tasks that we have identified so far that volunteers may engage in with refugees. As we work through this program, additional tasks and needs will be added. It's just a beginning list. Now, with the fantastic response of the community, and I mean fantastic, all of you know how fantastic this response has been, and we welcome it. With this response, we will have our first community support orientation in November. We already have 5 invited community groups and 30 people that will attend. Our hope is that we will be able to have an orientation meeting for community support each month, at least monthly. If we have to have more in a month, we will, but right now we'll be kicking it off in the beginning of November and seeing how that goes. Now, in order to participate in the CS program at the Institute, volunteers, preferably groups of volunteers, have to complete an application. They have to attend an orientation that WAPA and I will conduct. They have to agree to a background check. Our program also has options for financial contribution to supported cases. And WAPA is going to talk a bit more about that. So you can make financial and or in-kind contributions to assigned families that you are working with. We also will require that there are weekly updates, more if necessary, to WAPA. So each week, volunteers will update WAPA on what they're doing with the family, if any issues have come up with, if anything needs to be followed up with. Our program does have a commitment of up to 6 years. I'm sorry, not 6 years, up to 6 months, I apologize. And that volunteers have to be 18 years or older. Now, we also get consent from refugee participants. So before we match any volunteer up with a refugee, we've gotten consent from that individual or family that they want to participate in this program. Ideally, we will try to match participants within the first week of arrival, ideally. Because we do require that consent to participate as of right now, we only have 1 African case to match with the volunteer group. Most refugee arrivals have family connections in St. Louis, and they are at least initially preferring to rely on family for that community integration component. All of the Afghan arrivals since September have also likewise declined to participate in this program, preferring to work with their family connections. Now, we will go back to families that have been here maybe 2 or 3 weeks or up to a month and inquire if they're interested. So we might be able to enroll a few more people quickly. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to WAPA now. WAPA is going to talk a bit about the financial contributions that volunteers can make, and also some of the activities that we've so far identified for volunteers and families. WAPA?
Hi, everyone. My name is Approximate. It's nice to be here. Thank you all for inviting me. I want to begin by just kind of defining what community support is, and that is the dedication of providing financial assistance, in-kind donation, as well as other volunteer services to newly arrived refugees. It's basically community members embracing and supporting refugees in the process of resettlement and integration. As a community support volunteer, you would participate in setting up the apartment, stocking the pantry. You could also support refugees by serving as their guide to the community and assisting with transportation to medical appointments or grocery stores, developing their English classes, financial education, mentorship, tutoring, and serving as a resource to orient families to their new community. You will also, again, be supporting families financially as well too in their resettlement journey. And financial assistance varies. You could pay to, you could agree to pay families rent, their internet, security deposit, groceries, utilities, bus passes, gift cards for specific needs, or even when setting up their house. And again, other things might come up that that family will need, and those things will be addressed as it comes up with the family. Our aim with community sponsorship is to bridge the gap between the resettlement process and community services while adapting quickly to life in St. Louis. And as a CS volunteer, you will work closely with family newly arrived refugees to learn how to navigate their new environment. Community support does ask for a group to sponsor a family, and that group needs to consist of 5 to 10 members with an identified group representative or co-representatives. And that group representative will be the primary contact with the International Institute. Financial commitment will be a 3-month commitment and a 6-month commitment. And we have different levels for that, which we will address when individuals attend the orientation. Once you attend the orientation, you will complete the application, the community support group application. A background check will be conducted to make sure that everything is good, and then we will match you with a family. Again, just to reiterate that we do have an orientation coming up in November. We've invited 5 groups, roughly 30 people, and we're hoping to do orientation every month. Right now, we're having more support from the community than we have clients who are ready to participate in the program. So just please be patient with us as we get more clients to match with community members who are wanting to support these families. And that's pretty much it.
Well, thank you, Ariel and Wafa. We're just going to pause here, and I hope that both of you will be happy to take any questions that we have from the group.
Sure.
There is one question: who are the 5 organizations that have been invited?
I'm not sure if WAPA has that list. I do not know of the 5 organizations. What has happened is we've had many people call us and contact WAPA and say, hey, I would like to participate with refugees. I'm interested in working with refugees for community integration. And from that, we've generated a list of individuals and groups that we were able to invite. We've had, I'm sorry to say, we've had a handful of groups that wanted to do this program for like 3 months now. So we've got a long queue and a long waiting list, and we're just really excited to finally kick it off in the beginning of November. If you're interested in participating in this group, just please email WAPA and we will contact you and schedule you for an orientation for the next orientation.
Okay.
I also want to add that we do have a lot of interest. However, it's going to require training. Part of our program requires any eligible or interested party that wants to do this to go through the orientation and training. Likewise, with our resettlement program, we are able to work with volunteers, but those volunteers must go through an R&P, a resettlement orientation and training and background checks and screening prior to being allowed to engage in direct service with clients. So while we have organizations and individuals that say they want to help in maybe an ad hoc capacity, functionally for us, those relationships very much have to be formalized in order to stay compliant with our funders. And that includes orientation, training, and background checks for all volunteers who are interfacing directly with clients.
Yeah, thank you very much, Blake. I see there are 2 questions in the chat, but I also see that George Bailey has indicated with a question, as well as Jennifer Backwell. So I'll go to George, then we'll pick up the questions in the chat, and then we'll go on to Jennifer. So George, please.
Thank you. So one of the questions I've got, I guess I'm going to describe for you what I'm hearing to see if there are any discrepancies between what I'm hearing and what the reality is. Like, if I understand it, if my family, for example, wants to get engaged, then I would volunteer kind of as a family unit. And then I would be assigned to a family that we would then help with their transportation and other needs to kind of get them oriented within the community. Also, I seem to hear that there's like the possibility of just kind of like my group rather than my family, but we just make sure that there's a point person for the group. Am I understanding that correctly?
When I said families in my portion, and I'm sorry I didn't clarify. I was referencing refugee families. However, if your family is a family and you've got 5 members or more, and your family wants to work with a refugee family in the Institute, we would certainly welcome you into this program. You would just need one person who would be the point of contact for that, for WAFA. So we would welcome individual families. We just really want there to be groups of individuals, organizations, whatnot. I know in the chat, somebody is asking if the university can sponsor one family for 6 months. And yes, as long as the university has dedicated, identified staff that will work this project. So if the university gives us 10 names of people who will work with a family, a refugee family, and those 10 individuals participate in orientation and training, then yes, the university can participate.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. That clarifies a lot. And those, you said that if it's a family, I'm assuming that the 5 members of the family have to also be 18 years or older as well. Like my wife and I, we have 5 children, 14
Yes.
down to 1. Probably my wife and I qualify, but the other kids don't.
Yes.
Okay, got it. We'll find a group.
Everybody would have to be 18 and older.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
I think somebody asked a question about financial, and I can't find it now.
Yes, the question is, what is the approximate range of financial support for 3 or 6 months?
So we have 3 tiers. WAPA came up with 3 tiers, and it's anywhere from $500 on up to, what is it, 2,400, WAPA? What's the top?
So it's from $500 to $5,000, and it is broken off. When you attend the orientation, we will be able to tell you how you're able to allocate that money. But it's anywhere from $500 to $5,000, and that $5,000 actually is for bigger families of 5, 6, 7, or 8. That if you have the means to support them, then that option is available to you.
And that contribution, while it will come to the Institute, it goes to your specific refugee family or individual that you are working with. So if an organization or a group of volunteers says, we have $1,000 and we want it to go to our family that we're working with for rent, we will make sure that that money goes specifically to rent. Once you attend the orientation, there's other options of where the funds can go to. So things such as internet payment, utilities, bus passes. So there's a variety of things, but we'll get more into very, very specific information in the orientations.
Great. And apparently, Ariel, you answered Jennifer's question.
Okay.
Are there any other questions with reference to so far with reference to the community support program? Well, seeing none, we are very excited about this program and the opportunity to engage with the community in such a meaningful way. Like I always said, more than just a welcome, we really have to make sure that our new neighbors come here and are successful. And we are hoping that this community support program is going to allow for better integration. We're all going to be learning in this process, both the refugee families and us as well. It will be a learning process, and as this program evolves, we may have to make some changes to adapt the program to the reality of the arrivals.
I'm looking forward to it, and I think WAPA is looking forward to it. I've been around long enough that I remember when we did another large volunteer push, and that was in 2015. And in that situation, we got a lot of individual volunteers who are supporting refugee resettlement. So this is a new component that I'm looking forward to.
Great. And to conclude, just two things that I would like to highlight about the program, which I know Blake highlighted, but really just want to emphasize again that as a resettlement agency, we receive federal grants, and we're very, very strict. We adhere to very strict. Of course, most of you are on the call. Receive grants, and grants always come with all of the strict guidelines, and we do have monitoring that goes on from time to time to ensure that we are respecting these guidelines. And sometimes these guidelines could seem cumbersome, but it's the only way that we can serve our clients to the best of our ability. But it doesn't mean that our relationship with the clients end with the grants. These are people who are going to live in this community and become an integral part of this community. I'm hoping that this initial community support serves as an orientation for them and for us. And as time goes on, we're going to even become and define even closer ways that people in the community can engage and interact with the families. I just wanted to highlight that there is going to be a process as we go along in this engagement. Feedback is welcome. We're going to learn as we go along, but this aspect of it on the front end, especially within this first 90 days of arrivals, are things that we will be compelled to oblige ourselves to those guidelines. I see one more question from Justin.
I have a
yeah. There's a question which says, can you describe briefly the process of English language instruction, the curriculum, who's teaching? I think this is one that goes to Anita. Anita is the Vice President of Education at the
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I was just going to start a chat to respond to the question. Building on our many years here of teaching ESL to adults here at the Institute, we recently started a new pilot transitions class for new arrivals. As everybody has mentioned, there is a lot of stuff that the new arrivals have to do in the first few weeks that they're in this country. And so the design of this transitions class is to minimize the number of hours they have to be in the class per week, but it's basically providing must-know English, so to speak, as they get their lives settled. And then we transition them to adult education ESL classes in the community. We also have a literacy level class class for those who have not had education in their own language, as well as an evening class in person. At this time, the adult ed classes that we are collaborating with are only doing things remote, and many of the new arrivals don't have the ability to participate in remote classes the way that they have designed them. So we've got, we've adjusted our programming. Anyone who has ever been to the Institute, when we were in person, it was a place full of vitality, lots of students going in and out of classes. And so we are hoping to return to that before times at some point. But at this time, we have just a few classes that are in person. The transitions class I mentioned, the literacy level class, as well as the evening multi-level class. And then we are also transitioning and connecting people to adult education ESL classes that are currently remote.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anita. We also have another question. Still from George. It says, I've heard people making their houses unit available to refugees. Do refugees receive financial assistance for paying rent?
Yes,
Ariel.
all refugees and approved Afghan parolees receive what we call a resettlement fund, if you will. And that money is $10.25 per person to be spent out within 3 months of the resettlement period. The money does come to the resettlement agency, and they use it on behalf of the client for rent, utilities, medical bills, transportation, food, a variety of things.
Thank you for that clarification. Anita, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Ari. I got a question in the chat that I think everyone will benefit from. The question has to do with how can members of the community support this need for English language instruction specifically. We have had many volunteers submit applications. We are in the process of processing those. Similar to what Wafa said earlier, there have been more volunteers than we have the clients just yet. With patience, we will be reaching out to engage more volunteers with our English language services that we provide. And I also forgot to mention that it is thanks to a Marillac Mission Fund that we are able to offer the transitions class I mentioned, as well as the literacy level class. And I just wanted to make sure I said that while Claire is on the call. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Anita was saying. It is true that we do have more interested support and volunteers than we do have arriving refugees. However, that might change in the very near future. Right now, I know for this week, I'm waiting for flight arrivals for 4 cases. They may come this week, they may come next week. It's gonna, like Blake had mentioned in previous meetings, it could be within a 24-hour notice. So all of my staff have been put on alert for possible weekend arrivals, late night arrivals, whatnot. Just be patient with us. As soon as there's a consistent flow of arrivals, whether they're what we call regular refugees, SIVs, or APA refugees, we will start in pulling you in to help us with this resettlement.
Yeah, we have there's a question about resettlement in Illinois. The question is from Dr. Beverly.
I think Paul is on the line, and maybe he wants to talk about how each state has their own criteria or parameters. Basically, for St. Louis, we cannot resettle or work to resettle any individuals across state lines. So not in Illinois, not in Kansas, not in Arkansas. We have to do resettlement in Missouri. Illinois has their own refugee state coordinator located in Springfield. and you can do a Google search and find out who that is and inquire about resettlement in Southern Illinois. I will tell you that there are not resettlement sites in Southern Illinois that I know of, at least. Most of them are in Springfield and up north.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ariel, for that. Paul, I don't know whether you want to add something to that, but
yeah, just real quick, because Dr. Beverly and I have spoken before. So yeah, the resettlement part does involve state lines. However, the employment part does not. So there are services and other things that people can get across the state lines as long as they are residents of the initial state that they're in.
thank you very much, Paul. With the time that we have left, I want to turn this over to Blake to talk about two more items that we want to highlight here. So Blake, please go ahead.
Sure. So I mentioned before that we anticipate having multiple opportunities throughout the coming months to increase the number of African arrivals that we will be resettling through the Institute. There's a lot goes into sort of making those determinations, but ultimately we're looking at regional capacity. And regional capacity, while it begins with our capacity as an organization to serve, it functionally comes down to what is our community's ability to welcome. And a welcoming attitude is really just sort of the first step. Actually engaging in the activities of welcoming, that is the next step. And the International Institute, nonprofits in general, are not immune from the Great Resignation, as it's being called. We are right now, we currently on our website, we have 12 open positions. And with the new federal fiscal year upon us, we have about 12 more positions that we need to get posted here very soon. Filling these positions is really critical in order for us to have the capacity needed to provide services to the people that we've already committed to, the 500. And so while we very much appreciate the work of our partners, and will continue to need our partners whether or not these positions are filled, in order to execute and provide that top quality service to the clients that we're working with, we are not able to really expand our capacity beyond our current commitments without A, increased staffing, and B, more formalized commitments amongst partners. So if you have heard anything today that you would like to take to your organization, or ways that you would like to get connected, we are very much interested in formalizing our connections with community partners to deliver the services that we're talking about. Additionally, if you or members of the communities you work with might be interested in these positions, we are very much in need of staff members to come execute on the plans that we have for serving folks the way we described here today. And that will get us to a place where we're more comfortable, possibly increasing that number. But we really need those formalized relationships and the staff members in order to be able to execute. So I just wanted to underscore that as being really a prerequisite for any additional increase.
Well, thank you very much, Blake. At this point, again, I would open up for if there's any questions with reference to staffing. Alan?
Yes, I do. Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you very much for inviting me to attend. As I mentioned to Blake when I spoke to him last week, I got started 40 years ago. I worked for the International Institute. I worked for a number of years. That's my first job out of college. And I worked there resettling refugees for about 4 years. And most recently, I worked for 23 years as an asylum officer in Miami, interviewing asylum applicants and adjudicating their claims. I just retired from that position 2 years ago, and I'm doing some consulting work now. So the immigration consulting work now, the area that I'm focused on is doing mock interviews for applicants before their asylum interview in the USCIS asylum office, which would be in Chicago. Obviously, the one in St. Louis, the applicants would be out of the Chicago office. The question that I have is, and I know I spoke to Blake last week, is I think you mentioned that the Afghan humanitarian parolees are going to be required to submit, if they choose, obviously, their I-589 asylum applications, and then be scheduled for an interview. Is somebody working there at the International Institute preparing the I-589s, or are you establishing partnerships with other agencies or immigration attorneys in the St. Louis area or elsewhere? Because that's where I would be able to fit in. I would be able to do the mock interview, which would be, I've done thousands of these mock interviews over the last over 20 years, and I would be able to provide that service to these Afghan parolees that are going to be scheduled for their actual interview. So that's that's sort of the question that I have. Is that the process that's in place for that yet, or?
Yeah, so we have a immigration cohort that's been meeting as we've done breakouts within these weekly sessions. And I mentioned that to you when we spoke. However, this meeting is taking a little bit of a different format. We are meeting as a group of immigration and legal system stakeholders. Now we have a meeting set, I believe it's November 10th. And I'd love to extend that invitation to you to attend that. And what that is a consortium of folks that was initially formed around this table here in our immigration breakouts, which includes the MICA project, and includes Catholic Legal Aid Ministries, and other individual lawyers, attorneys, and interested parties. And we are really working on how we build regional capacity to support these applications, because the numbers that we're talking about are not insignificant, and are really being added to an already very tight workload for all these organizations. Legal Services of Eastern Missouri likewise is involved with these conversations, and we are our focus is building regional capacity to support these applications and others that are in our community, not just for Afghan arrivals, but for folks who are seeking asylum from the southern border and elsewhere, that we're seeing more and more of these requests coming into our community. And so I would love, Alan, to get you connected to that meeting as
Sure.
well. And anytime that we have that conversation around this table, you're obviously more than welcome to attend.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. There was a question earlier from Claire, and I wanted to kick it over to Linda or Paul, but Claire asked, are the funds that we're talking about available with APA, RSS, and healthcare, health promotion, are those available to other refugee service providers in the community? I know the answer, but I'm kicking it over to Linda for clarification.
Yeah. And Linda or Paul can take that.
Paul, did you want to answer that, or you want me?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to point out, I was a little late to the meeting, is we have not gotten the guidance on these funds quite yet. And so we don't know where, what the federal government's intent is on the use of these funds. Generally, the funds are open to all service providers and go through an RFP process. But because this is an emergency situation, there probably will not be an RFP process, because that would take upwards of 8 months or so to actually to get RFPs out and do selections and things like that. So the Missouri Office of Refugee Administration is going to check when the federal guidance comes out, what the parameters are, and then we will utilize those funds fully to support the APA clients.
Yeah. Well, with that, once we have that information, Paul and Linda, I hope that you come back here to be able to explain this to everybody, so that if there are opportunities for everyone around the table to participate in this programs and processes, we would appreciate that. We're mindful of time. Again, we just want to thank you all for taking time to be here. We hope that the information we shared today is really valuable. We're really looking forward to this community support program. Looking forward and thanking all the groups that have come out to volunteer, and expecting more volunteers to show up on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and obviously spread the word. We're looking for committed people to help us continue with this mission in terms of staffing. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.